So wish.com is a website that sells ludicrously cheap items, and just scrolling through the homepage you can see the ridiculous prices on things that are clearly scams. But my curiosity peaked when I saw a 256GB SD card priced for less than $20. And you see, I work in video, so for me, something that is that much storage and is that cheap is crazy, because that's a week's worth of shooting without having to reformat a card once. Now, I knew the website and the product looked suspicious, looked curious, but I figured $20 is $20. So I bought it. A few weeks later it came in, and now, today, we test it out. At first I was suspicious because it looks exactly like a SanDisk SD card that like a good quality one that I own, but when I opened up the actual product, no SanDisk logo was to be found. Instead, there was this weird Kim Snot logo instead of SanDisk, so that sent off a bit of a red flag for me right away. See, when it comes to buying cheap gear, I've actually got a bit of buying experience. I've bought about 4 things in the world of cheap video gear. That includes a cheap GoPro knockoff, a horseshoe stabilizer, a macro lens adapter, a couple of variable ND filters, and a few spare batteries. All for about $50 or less. Now first, we can talk about this stabilizer. I've taken this to pretty much any shoot that I've been to in the last, well, since I've had it. I got it for $20, super cheap, there's no moving parts, so it's not like a gimbal stabilizer. When you're handheld, there's a lot more shake involved, plus your hands get more tired. This is so much easier to hold for a long amount of time, and it's just that tiny bit more steady where it's like, yep, that can do. This is really good for $20, so great reviews on that. Next up, I've bought spare batteries for both of my cameras, my 80D and my 650D. Yeah, they're great. I mean, I obviously use them for all my shoots. The 80D doesn't always need a spare battery because it's got a good battery anyway, but my 650D, because it's an older camera, doesn't have a very big battery, very good to have a spare camera. I've got it for about $40 from the local, tech store. Works great, use it all the time. Good reviews for that one. Next up is my variable ND filters. Now, I've talked about what these do in another video. Essentially, sunglasses for your camera. Love those. I got them for about $20, give or take, each. I've got 3 of them, and they are just super useful. Love them, take them to a lot of shoots. I don't use them all the time, not as much as the stabilizer or the batteries, but definitely useful, definitely don't regret buying them. The only bad thing I can say about them is that on like insanely bright shoots, you get the sides being a little more brighter than the middle, a price that I'm happy to pay for what you get. Then we go to the macro adapter. Now, I've shown what this can do in videos before. I got it for $25. It was a fine purchase. I don't regret it. There was nothing wrong with it. I obviously am using it in this video to get that close up on the SD card, but other than that, I don't use it much. I haven't used it much. Look, it works perfect for what I need it for. It just happens that I don't need to use it a lot. It kind of collects a bit more dust than I use it for, but $25 is a fine price. This one I kind of feel neutral to. I'm like, eh. Finally, we go to what is definitely my worst purchase, and this is this GoPro knockoff cheap action cam thing. I got it for $55, so technically I didn't get it for less than $50, but I'm gonna include it anyway because in comparison to a GoPro, it's obviously a lot cheaper, but it's just terrible. The quality of the camera is awful. I mean, look, if you record now, it's so bad. I mean, it's got a good wide frame, but the audio is terrible. The frame rate is not even, it's 15 frames per second at 1080p. That is unusable. That's garbage, so I'm not going to use that ever again for anything. The only thing I've ever used it for is this video, and even that I regret doing, so definitely regret that purchase. Would not recommend getting a knockoff GoPro action camera. So my experience with cheap gear has been pretty mixed. I've had some good stuff, some it doesn't matter, and some bad stuff. But where does this SD card place? Well, after testing it, I can say that it's bad. It's not good. It's just sucks. Pretty bad SD card. I got scammed. I'll happily admit it. Now, the 256GB claim is just plain wrong. In testing, it actually can only hold about 8GB. This is apparently pretty common with really cheap, scammy SD cards. Basically, they make it so that it looks like, on a computer and on a camera, it looks like, I mean, my computer says it has nearly 270 gigabytes, which is more than the 256. But in reality and in testing, it only lasted for about 8 gigabytes of shooting, and then anything after that just becomes corrupt. It won't let you film. I filmed for about, I think it was 20 minutes, and it filled up 8 gigabytes, and then anything I tried to film after this happened. Any of the footage that was got once that was happening, it just became corrupt. It didn't work. And then I tried to put footage onto the card, and that footage then became corrupt when it was put on the card. So basically you can only fill it up 8 gigabytes, and then anything you put on otherwise just gets corrupt. So it kind of has 256, but only 8 gigabytes is actually usable. What about the speed of the card? It says 95 megabytes per second right there on the front. Is it good enough to use on a Canon 80D? And yes and no. As I thought, the 95 megabytes per second pretty clearly refers to read speed, not write speed, which is a big difference for videographers. At the same time, I was testing it, filming on my Canon 80D at 1080p, 60 frames per second, and it filmed fine. It kept up with the right speeds. It was okay to film in 1080-60 on the Canon, but it's definitely not very fast. When I was transferring the footage from the card to my laptop, it took a lot longer than my other SD cards. It's clearly not a very fast card, but look, it kept up with the Canon 80D, so here's what I can say in summation about this card. It's a perfectly fine, less than average quality 8GB SD card that I could see myself using as like a backup if I absolutely needed it. If I was out of all my cards for some reason, and that's my last resort, yeah, I'll use it. It's 8GB, 20 minutes of footage, or 30 or whatever. I'll take it. It's 8GB, whatever. I'll have it as a spare card, but I'm certainly not using it as my main SD card. I certainly can't recommend it in any way. And the thing is, you can buy a card that has double the size, 16GB, and is a lot faster for $20 as well. So it's not even like it's good quality for money. It doesn't even give you decent quality for money. It's just a scam, just a massive scam. Wish.com, I can definitely not recommend. It's an absolute scam. Just stay away from all those kinds of... Overall, if you're gonna buy cheap video products or video gear or anything like that, don't get something that has anything to do with software or like moving mechanical parts. My experience says that anything that is like physical, like this, or like the ND filters or the macro lens, everything that is fixed in their physicality and doesn't rely on any kind of cheapo software, that is gonna be totally fine. But when it comes to things like cameras and SD cards, don't trust those, because you'll often find it's not worth the value for money, and you're not going to enjoy it anyway. So there you go. There is my experience with this 256GB SD card and Wish.com in general. I would certainly not recommend either. I hope you enjoyed this story and tale, and I hope it helped you caution yourself away from such a scamming website. But thank you for watching. If you liked the video, as always, like and subscribe, and check out my socials, and check out what I'm doing everywhere. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.